Welcome to Zoe Stories. From pretend girl to real woman. My name's Alex Carter, and on the surface, I'm just another 25-year-old guy living in the heart of a city. By day, I work in a small graphic design firm, sitting in front of multiple screens, creating colorful layouts and websites that bring ideas to life. My office is a typical open-plan setup, with fluorescent lights humming softly, the faint aroma of coffee in the air, and the quiet murmur of coworkers typing or chatting about weekend plans. To most people, I'm ordinary, predictable. Yet, behind closed doors, my life holds a secret that I've harbored for years, a secret that no one would guess by glancing at me in my button-down shirts and jeans. Ever since I was a teenager, I've been fascinated by femininity. Not in a superficial way, but in a deep, consuming sense. The delicate curves of a dress, the artistry of makeup, the confidence in a graceful step, all of it felt intoxicating. I experimented quietly, trying on my sister's clothes when she wasn't around, dabbling with eyeliner and lipstick in the safety of my bedroom. At first, it was curiosity, then excitement, then something more. Something I couldn't name at the time. It wasn't just a hobby, it became a need. A part of me that I had to nurture, even if only in secret. I wanted to experience the world through that lens, to feel it against my skin, to inhabit it fully, even if only in the shadows. Yet, the fear of judgment, of being exposed, always held me back. I lived a double life. Alex at work, Alex with friends, Alex in the world, and another Alex, delicate and feminine, waiting in the quiet of my apartment to emerge. Emma entered my life 2 years ago, and everything changed. She was smart, beautiful, and curious in ways that drew people in, yet she had a mischievous streak that made life exciting. We met at a local art exhibit, and her laughter was magnetic. She challenged me in ways no one else had, and slowly, I found myself drawn closer, letting her in on pieces of my life I had kept hidden. The first time I told Emma about my secret crossdressing was terrifying. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, fingers fidgeting with the hem of my shirt, heart hammering against my ribs. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," I said, voice tight. Her eyes softened, and instead of the judgment I had feared, there was curiosity, a gentle tilt of her head, and then a smile. "Show me," she whispered. That single word, simple, yet profound, changed everything. Emma didn't just accept me, she encouraged me. She teased me playfully, sometimes daring me to push boundaries I hadn't dared to approach alone. Her support gave me courage, yet it also intensified my internal struggles. Every transformation, every experiment, became a delicate dance of exhilaration and vulnerability. I craved her approval, feared disappointing her, and yet, in her presence, I felt safer to explore the person I truly was inside. My apartment became my sanctuary, cozy yet modern, with muted tones, plush furniture, and a balcony overlooking the bustling city below. The soft hum of the traffic, the distant chatter of people on the streets, and the flickering city lights at night created a backdrop for my secret life. Here, I could be her, Alex, the feminine persona I longed to inhabit, without fear of interruption. My collection of dresses, makeup, and accessories was carefully hidden, yet lovingly curated. Each item held meaning, a lipstick that reminded me of daring moments, a dress that made me feel confident, a pair of heels that transformed my walk into something graceful and deliberate. And yet, the suspense of being discovered was always present. Even in this sanctuary, the thought of someone walking in unexpectedly sent shivers down my spine. Emma sometimes visited unannounced, and each time I had to balance the thrill of transformation with the fear of exposure. It was a delicate, intoxicating tension, one that made my heart race and my mind whirl. Tonight was different. I had planned it meticulously, knowing Emma would be late with work. The apartment was quiet, the city outside buzzing faintly in the distance. I pulled out a dress I had purchased weeks ago, a soft, flowing piece that seemed made for me, delicate yet alluring. My hands shook slightly as I touched the fabric, anticipation and fear mingling in a way that made my pulse quicken. I looked at myself in the mirror, hesitant yet eager. The reflection staring back was a mix of nervousness and desire. This was the moment I had been waiting for, fully embracing the persona I had kept hidden, letting the feminine side I had begged to nurture come alive in full. My heart raced as I considered the possibilities, the thrill of transformation, and the looming suspense of discovery. Emma would eventually come home, and when she did, she would see me, not just Alex pretending, but the real, delicate, feminine version of myself. The thought sent a shiver of excitement through me. As I began the process, applying makeup, selecting the perfect accessories, adjusting the dress, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and vulnerability. Every brushstroke of eyeliner, every adjustment of a wig, every slip into heels brought me closer to the reality I had longed for. I was no longer just pretending. I was becoming her. Each detail mattered, from the subtle curve of my eyeliner to the way the dress hugged my figure. The suspense, however, was ever present. A sudden noise from the street below, the creak of the floorboards, or even the faint hum of the refrigerator felt amplified. Every sound could signal interruption, exposure, the unraveling of the persona I had begged to become. Yet, the exhilaration outweighed the fear. This was who I wanted to be, and tonight, I would embrace it fully. The mirror reflected a transformation that was both delicate and breathtaking. Alex, the man the world knew, was gone, replaced by a persona I had begged to embody. She looked back at me with soft, wide eyes, flushed cheeks, and a tentative smile. My hands, clad in delicate gloves, adjusted the hem of the dress. My heels clicked lightly against the floor as I took tentative steps, marveling at the subtle sway of my hips. For the first time, I felt complete, vulnerable yet empowered. The suspense of being discovered, the fear of judgment, and the thrill of transformation collided in a storm of emotion that left me breathless. Emma would see me soon, and the moment would test not only my courage, but the strength of the persona I had begged to become. And as I stood there, trembling yet radiant, I realized this was only the beginning. The journey from pretend girl to real woman had just begun, and the suspense, emotional drama, and thrilling transformation awaited, ready to unfold in ways I had only dreamed of. The apartment felt like a cocoon tonight, quiet except for the faint hum of the city beyond the windows. Every object around me, the plush rug beneath my feet, the velvet throw on the sofa, the small desk cluttered with brushes and makeup, was a piece of the world I had constructed for her. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the dress I had carefully selected for tonight, running my fingers along the soft silk. It smelled faintly of lavender and new fabric, a scent that somehow made the persona I had begged to inhabit feel alive. Transformation had never been just a hobby. It had been a need, a longing that had persisted quietly for years. I remembered my teenage self, sneaking into my sister's room, holding a skirt in my hands, wondering if anyone would ever understand the person I was becoming. The thrill of secrecy had always been paired with an ache, a yearning for the moment I could truly be seen, not as Alex, the man the world knew, but as her, delicate, confident, and free. Tonight was that night. Emma was late with work, the perfect window for me to fully immerse myself. My reflection in the mirror stared back, uncertain yet eager. I could see the tension in my shoulders, the nervous fidgeting of my hands, but beneath that was a spark of excitement. I was about to cross a line I had dreamed of for years. The first step was always the most intimate: foundation. My fingers worked with deliberate care, blending every shade until the contours of my face softened. Each brushstroke was a small victory, a step closer to the persona I had begged to become. As the layers built up, I felt a subtle shift, not just in appearance, but in presence. I was becoming someone else, someone I had longed to inhabit fully. The next challenge was the dress. I lifted it carefully, feeling the silk glide through my fingers. Sliding it over my head was a ritual I had perfected, the sensation of fabric brushing against my skin sending shivers down my spine. I adjusted it over my shoulders, letting it fall naturally, feeling the subtle shaping of my body as curves appeared where once there were none. I moved slowly in front of the mirror, testing the sway of my hips, the subtle movement that made the persona feel real. Shoes were next. High heels had always been a mixture of thrill and terror for me. Tonight, I stepped carefully, the click of each heel echoing softly in the apartment. My reflection in the mirror grew more convincing with each movement. I felt both vulnerable and powerful, the dichotomy of excitement and fear intensifying every heartbeat. The wig was the final touch. Brushing it carefully, I adjusted each strand, making sure it framed my face perfectly. My hands lingered on the soft fibers, marveling at the transformation. For the first time tonight, the reflection staring back wasn't Alex pretending, it was her. The persona I had begged to inhabit was no longer a fantasy. She was alive, tangible, and breathtaking. The thrill, however, was paired with unease. Every sound in the apartment, the faint hum of the refrigerator, a distant siren outside, the creak of the floorboards, amplified my awareness. Emma could walk through the door at any moment. Friends could drop by. The entire facade I had begged to create could shatter with a single interruption. I clutched the hem of my dress, feeling the silk ripple beneath my fingers, and reminded myself, this was the risk I had always craved. I moved deliberately, practicing gestures in front of the mirror. The tilt of my head, the sway of my hips, the delicate placement of my hands, each movement reinforced the persona. I whispered softly to myself, testing the tone and inflection of my voice. Every syllable was a step closer to becoming her fully. The excitement was addictive, yet a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. Moments like these were my sanctuary and my battlefield. The persona I had begged to be was empowering, yet the suspense of exposure made every heartbeat a drum of tension. I paced slightly, testing the balance of the heels, the flow of the dress. Each movement was a rehearsal, a preparation for the eventual confrontation with reality. Emma coming home and seeing me, not as Alex, but as the woman I had longed to embody. By the time I reached the small balcony overlooking the city, my pulse was racing. The night air brushed against my skin, heightening every sensation. I imagined Emma's reaction, the awe and surprise in her eyes, the subtle approval I craved so desperately. The persona I had begged to become was fragile yet powerful, delicate yet commanding. As I returned to the bedroom, I noticed the small jewelry box I had neglected earlier. Opening it carefully, I selected a pair of earrings, delicate silver hoops that would complement the wig and dress perfectly. Each accessory, each detail, was symbolic. They weren't just adornments, they were tools of transformation, props in the suspenseful drama of identity I had begged to live. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I marveled at the reflection staring back. The city outside hummed obliviously, but inside, my world had shifted. I was no longer just Alex, the man who hid his desires. I was her, fully realized, trembling with excitement and fear. The journey from pretend girl to real woman was underway, and every step, every heartbeat, every nervous glance in the mirror was a thrill-laden risk. The suspense of discovery, the emotional intensity, and the intoxicating thrill of transformation filled the apartment. Tonight, I would test every boundary, explore every nuance of identity, and embrace the persona I had begged to become, knowing that every sound, every shadow, every potential interruption could change everything in an instant. The room felt alive with anticipation as I continued my preparation. My reflection in the mirror had grown more familiar, yet each glance revealed subtle flaws I longed to perfect. The persona I had begged to inhabit demanded precision. The eyeliner had to be exact, the lipstick flawless, the wig adjusted, so every strand fell naturally. Every detail mattered, not just for appearance, but for the confidence that came with feeling convincing in this feminine form. I sat on the edge of the bed, lifting a small makeup brush and carefully blending blush along my cheekbones. The warmth of the color brought the reflection to life, softening my features and accentuating the contours I had longed to embrace. My hands trembled slightly, not from uncertainty, but from the thrill of seeing my transformation take shape. Each stroke of the brush was both an act of creation and a surrender to the persona I had begged to become. As the transformation progressed, my thoughts grew restless. Questions and doubts flooded my mind. What if Emma walks in early? What if someone calls? What if I can't maintain this persona convincingly? These fears were familiar, yet tonight they felt more acute, more pressing. I clenched my hands, momentarily gripping the silk of my dress for reassurance. It wasn't just about appearance, it was about embodiment. I needed to inhabit every gesture, every inflection, every movement. The suspense of potential exposure magnified my anxiety, and yet, paradoxically, it heightened my excitement. The persona I had begged to live was delicate, vulnerable, yet intoxicatingly empowering. I whispered to myself, practicing the feminine tone I would need. My voice, soft and melodic, rolled off my tongue differently than usual. It felt foreign at first, then natural. I experimented with laughter, with sighs, with small conversational tones. Each trial reinforced my immersion into her, deepening the bond between my reality and the identity I had begged to become. The heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor as I practiced walking, testing balance and grace. Each step was deliberate, measured, yet natural. The sway of my hips, the tilt of my shoulders, the gentle cadence of my stride, every movement was rehearsed and refined, blending precision with instinct. I glanced at the mirror again, studying the reflection. She looked real. She felt real. The dress flowed perfectly with each movement, the silk catching the light in a way that accentuated curves I had only ever imagined. The wig, now perfectly adjusted, framed my face in soft waves that added elegance to the persona. Even the earrings glinted subtly, a reminder that every detail contributed to the illusion and to my emotional immersion in it. The transformation wasn't just external. I could feel it in the way I held myself, the way my chest rose with controlled breaths, the subtle rhythm of my heartbeat syncing with each movement. This was no longer mere play acting. It was living, fully and vividly. Yet, with the exhilaration came vulnerability. Every sound outside the apartment, the faint rumble of traffic, the distant laughter of neighbors, the hum of a refrigerator, threatened to break the illusion. My mind raced with scenarios of sudden discovery, of Emma returning unexpectedly, of someone seeing me like this. I knelt briefly to adjust my heels and caught a glimpse of the reflection from a different angle. The duality of her existence struck me. Alex, the man hidden beneath layers of silk and makeup, and the woman I had begged to become. The contrast sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of fear and empowerment. This suspense was addictive, a roller coaster of emotion that fueled both my anxiety and my thrill. I lingered in that moment, savoring the balance of excitement and vulnerability. Every detail mattered: the tilt of the head, the soft arch of an eyebrow, the gentle movement of a hand brushing back hair. These small, deliberate actions transformed the persona from an imagined ideal into a living, breathing reality. The clock ticked steadily toward midnight. Emma's absence granted me the freedom to explore fully, yet the suspense never left. Each creak of the floorboards, each faint murmur from the city below, made me flinch, reminded me of the fragile nature of my persona. A neighbor could knock at any moment, a friend could call unexpectedly, Emma could walk through the door early. Every possibility threatened to unravel the transformation I had begged to achieve. I walked deliberately around the apartment, testing the sway of the dress, the alignment of the wig, the balance of the heels. Every step reinforced the persona, but also heightened the tension. I felt like an actor on a stage, fully immersed in a role that carried high stakes. The suspense was intoxicating, a constant, thrilling edge to every heartbeat. Sitting at the vanity, I studied the reflection one last time before venturing further into the night. Her eyes stared back at me, wide, uncertain, yet confident in a fragile way. This was more than a transformation, it was a revelation. I had begged to become her for years, and now she existed, tangible and vulnerable. The anticipation of Emma's reaction loomed large. Would she see me as the woman I had become, or would she notice the cracks in the illusion? The suspense was not just about being discovered by others, it was about being fully seen and accepted for who I truly was. My fingers lingered over the delicate earrings, the soft fabric of the dress, the wig that framed my face. Each prop was a symbol, a key to the persona I had begged to embody. Every detail mattered, and every potential interruption magnified the stakes. The night deepened, and the apartment seemed to shrink around me, amplifying every sound and movement. I moved carefully through the space, heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, the sway of the dress following every step. The persona I had begged to inhabit was no longer just a reflection in the mirror. It was alive in every movement, every gesture. Yet the suspense of discovery gnawed at me relentlessly. I paused by the window, staring out at the city lights, and let myself breathe. The adrenaline of transformation mingled with fear, creating a cocktail of emotions that left me both exhilarated and tense. I whispered softly to myself, practicing inflections, laughing gently at the sound of my feminine voice. Every syllable, every breath, every sway of my hips reinforced the persona. But along with the thrill came doubt. What if the illusion wasn't perfect? What if Emma returned early or someone caught me off guard? My mind raced through every possible scenario. I imagined the sound of keys in the lock, the sudden surprise of her walking in, and my heart leapt into my throat. The tension was almost physical. I could feel it coiling in my chest, tightening with each step, each glance at the mirror. I had begged for this experience, but now that I was fully immersed, the stakes felt dangerously real. Vulnerability mingled with excitement, creating a sensation that was both intoxicating and terrifying. I sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching the fabric of my dress. My reflection stared back at me, delicate and radiant, yet still so fragile. Every detail, the tilt of my head, the curve of my lips, the softness of my hands, mattered. A single misstep could shatter the persona I had begged to live. Determined to perfect every detail, I moved to the vanity again. I adjusted the wig slightly, brushing strands into place, ensuring the framing of my face was flawless. I tested different expressions, practicing subtle smiles, delicate frowns, playful glances. Every micro-expression mattered, a part of the intricate dance that made the persona believable. The heels were another focus. I paced slowly, deliberately, testing balance and posture. Each step was a small rehearsal, a reminder of how my movements could sell the transformation or betray it. The dress swayed perfectly with each stride, and I felt a growing confidence tempered by an undercurrent of fear. Every sound from the building or street outside made me freeze, my pulse racing. As the night stretched on, I found myself exploring more intimate emotions. I whispered to myself, imagining Emma's reaction. Would she see me as the woman I had begged to become, or notice the lingering traces of Alex beneath the surface? The suspense of potential judgment and the thrill of potential approval collided inside me, making my chest tighten and my breath shallow. I reached for a small prop, a delicate silver bracelet, and held it in my hand, marveling at its symbolic weight. It wasn't just an accessory. It represented the persona I had begged to live, fragile yet precious. I tried it on, feeling the subtle weight against my wrist, imagining how Emma would notice the tiny details that completed the transformation. The mirror reflected not just an image but a story, Alex transforming into someone new, vulnerable yet empowered, delicate yet commanding. The suspense was part of the thrill, a constant reminder that every step I took could either solidify the persona or expose me completely. I moved carefully through the apartment, testing scenarios in my mind. What if someone knocked unexpectedly? What if a neighbor called? The possibilities spun through my mind like rapid fire, each one a spark that ignited my adrenaline. I tried sitting casually on the sofa, testing the sway of the dress, the posture of the shoulders, the tilt of the chin. Each movement had to be precise, yet natural. The persona I had begged to become required not just appearance but behavior gestures, and confidence. The stakes felt incredibly high, making every heartbeat a drum of suspense. I lingered near the balcony, listening to the city outside. The wind brushed my face, sending a shiver down my spine. I felt alive in ways I hadn't imagined, fully inhabiting this identity, yet acutely aware of how fragile it was. A single sound, a single interruption, could shatter everything I had constructed tonight. Finally, I focused on small props that completed the illusion. The earrings glinted softly in the ambient light. The bracelet hugged my wrist delicately. The wig flowed perfectly. Each element added to the persona, reinforcing her presence and the transformation I had begged to inhabit. I practiced final gestures in the mirror, adjusting posture, tilting my head, letting my eyes communicate emotions I had long kept hidden. I whispered softly, testing phrases, expressions, and tones. The suspense of being seen or discovered added intensity to every movement. By the end of part 3, I was fully immersed emotionally and physically. The persona was alive, and the suspense was palpable. Every gesture, every glance, every sound carried stakes. The next parts would push the transformation further, testing emotional resilience, heightening suspense, and introducing obstacles that would challenge the fragile reality I had begged to inhabit. The apartment was quiet now, the city lights casting soft glows across the room. I moved carefully, aware of every sound, every shadow. Each step in my heels echoed softly on the floor, a rhythmic reminder of the persona I had begged to fully inhabit. Tonight, I was no longer just Alex pretending. I was her, fragile yet confident, delicate yet commanding. Sitting at the vanity, I studied every detail of my reflection. The wig framed my face perfectly, the makeup highlighted every contour, and the dress hugged curves that had only existed in fantasy before. Yet, despite the flawless exterior, a tension lingered inside me, a mixture of anticipation, fear, and exhilaration. I knew the transformation was fragile. It could unravel at a single misstep. I ran my fingers along the fabric of the dress, feeling the silk ripple beneath my touch. The thrill of wearing it was paired with a pang of vulnerability. What if Emma returned unexpectedly? What if someone saw me like this? These fears, though familiar, were sharper tonight, heightened by the near-perfect illusion I had created. I whispered to myself, testing soft tones and phrases, letting my voice carry the persona. The sound of it was intoxicating, yet every syllable carried the weight of suspense. I was fully immersed, yet acutely aware that this identity, which I had begged to embody, was fragile. One knock, one unexpected call, could shatter everything. Standing slowly, I tested my posture in the heels again. Each step, each movement, was deliberate, rehearsed to convey confidence while maintaining the delicate femininity of the persona. I practiced subtle gestures, tilting my head, brushing hair from my face, placing a hand lightly on my hip. Each action was a rehearsal, a step closer to perfect embodiment. The mirror reflected not just appearance, but presence. I could see the difference between Alex and her. The sway of hips, the delicate lift of shoulders, the softness in the eyes. The suspense of being discovered heightened my awareness, forcing me to inhabit her fully. Every detail mattered. The angle of my glance, the cadence of my breathing, the gentle movement of my hands. The ticking clock reminded me of time slipping away, each second intensifying the suspense. Emma could walk through the door at any moment. A neighbor could knock unexpectedly. The possibility of exposure was a thrilling, constant undercurrent. I paused near the window, listening to the faint hum of the city, heart racing, mind alert to every sound. I walked slowly through the apartment, testing scenarios in my head. What if someone called the intercom? What if Emma returned earlier than expected? Every potential interruption was a spike of adrenaline, reminding me of the delicate balance I had achieved. The persona I had begged to inhabit was alive, yet vulnerable, dependent on secrecy and timing. I returned to the vanity and touched the earrings, bracelets, and delicate necklace I had carefully selected. Each piece was more than decoration. It symbolized the persona I had begged to live. They completed the illusion, reinforcing her presence and the transformation I had so meticulously crafted. Adjusting the wig one last time, I practiced a gentle smile in the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer Alex, it was her, fully realized yet trembling with the suspense of potential exposure. Each motion, each gesture, each breath reinforced the fragile reality I had begged to inhabit. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I allowed myself a moment of introspection. How far had I come? The persona was alive, yet the suspense of discovery created a cocktail of emotions: fear, excitement, exhilaration, and vulnerability. I realized that the thrill was inseparable from the anxiety. I had begged to feel this, to live this, and now I was fully immersed. The night had transformed me in more ways than one. Physically, I had become her. Emotionally, I was navigating the precarious tension of secrecy, testing my resilience, and exploring desires I had long hidden. Every heartbeat, every glance in the mirror, every subtle gesture was a step deeper into a reality I had begged to inhabit. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. I found myself standing outside Emma's favorite cafe, the one she had suggested we visit for fun, though tonight it was anything but ordinary. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves and the distant aroma of fresh coffee. My heels clicked lightly on the sidewalk, each step a careful measure of poise and confidence. This was different from being alone in a familiar space. Here, among strangers and curious eyes, the stakes felt infinitely higher. I could no longer rely on solitude to perfect my persona. Every movement, every glance, every inflection of my voice mattered. The thrill of exposure, the fear of recognition, it all combined into a heady tension that made my heart race and my palms sweat. As I walked, I rehearsed silent conversations in my head, imagining what I would say if someone addressed me. Every sound of passing cars, every muffled conversation, heightened my alertness. I was acutely aware of my dual identity: Alex, the man who had begged to become her, and the woman I now projected into the world. The tension between these two selves created a pulse of anxiety that I could neither escape nor fully control. A part of me thrilled at the risk. To be seen like this, in public, was both intoxicating and terrifying. The uncertainty of how others would perceive me, the possibility of recognition or judgment, kept my senses on high alert. I adjusted the strap of my bag nervously, feeling the silk of my dress brush against my skin, a small comfort amid the suspense. Walking down the street, I became acutely aware of every physical detail. The sway of my hips, the angle of my shoulders, the careful lift of my chin. All of it mattered. Each step in my heels was a performance, every gesture deliberate, yet appearing effortless. I glanced at a shop window and saw her reflection. My reflection, looking back. The image was breathtaking. Alex had truly vanished into her. The dress hugged curves that were once only imagined. The makeup highlighted delicate features, and the wig framed a face I had begged to live in. Yet the reflection also reminded me of the fragility of the persona. One wrong step, one misjudged movement, and everything could crumble. I paused outside a boutique, pretending to browse through the window display. A passerby glanced my way, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. Their look lingered just a moment too long, and my mind spiraled into 1,000 scenarios. What if they notice? What if they recognize me from work or elsewhere? I smiled faintly, keeping my composure, yet inside, the suspense made my heartbeat hammer in my chest. The thrill of being partially observed but not fully seen was intoxicating. Every interaction, even the smallest glance, carried stakes. I had begged for this immersion, and now I was living it fully, but every step outside the safety of familiarity magnified both vulnerability and excitement. I adjusted the bracelet on my wrist and smoothed the hem of the dress. Each prop, whether jewelry, bag, or accessory, served as an anchor to the persona I had begged to inhabit. They reminded me who I was pretending to be, who I had become, and the delicate balance required to maintain the illusion. A passerby brushed past, and I instinctively tilted my head, maintaining composure. The subtle sway of the dress, the careful positioning of my shoulders, and the measured cadence of my steps all reinforced the persona. The suspense of exposure made every micro-movement a test of both skill and nerve. I paused near a small park, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. The night air was cool, carrying with it a mixture of freedom and fear. I realized how far I had come, from the hesitant Alex in a private space to a woman navigating public spaces with poise and confidence. Yet the thrill was intertwined with vulnerability. Every heartbeat echoed the risk I was taking. The possibility of someone recognizing me, the chance of Emma seeing me in this unfamiliar environment, created a tension that was almost physical. I felt alive in ways I had never imagined, fully inhabiting a persona I had begged to live, yet constantly aware of how easily it could be shattered. The evening had taken on a charged energy as I stepped into the upscale lounge Emma had suggested for her celebration night. The ambient lighting reflected off polished surfaces, creating a soft glow that highlighted every detail of the crowd around me. I could feel their eyes, even if they weren't fully looking. Every movement, every glance, every breath carried the suspense of being exposed in this public setting. Tonight was no longer about practice or private indulgence, it was real. The persona I had begged to inhabit would now face the world, and the stakes were higher than ever. I adjusted the straps of my heels and smoothed the folds of the dress, silently reminding myself to maintain composure. This was the first real test. As I walked through the crowd, a man brushed past, his eyes flicking in my direction. My chest tightened as adrenaline surged through me. The slightest misstep, the smallest hesitation, could reveal the duality I had kept hidden for so long. My mind raced. What if Emma notices something off? What if someone from work is here? Every step was deliberate. The sway of my hips, the tilt of my head, the lift of my chin, all had to be precise. I caught my reflection briefly in a mirrored wall, and my heart skipped a beat. She was there, looking back at me, poised, delicate, undeniably feminine. Yet beneath that, Alex still existed, fragile and vulnerable, holding on to the persona I had begged to live. A woman approached the bar, striking up a conversation. I smiled politely, letting my voice flow naturally, soft and melodic. The thrill of speaking, of being seen fully as her, mingled with the fear of being discovered. My internal struggle intensified. Every word, every gesture, every laugh had to be perfect. One slip, one misaligned inflection, could shatter the illusion. I felt my pulse quicken as the conversation continued. I maintained eye contact, controlled my gestures, and subtly mirrored her movements. The persona was alive, breathing, reacting. Yet the suspense gnawed at the edges. I could feel Alex lurking beneath the surface, the ever-present fear of exposure mingling with the excitement of being fully visible. Just as I relaxed slightly, a familiar voice called out from across the room. My body froze. A colleague from work was standing by the lounge entrance, scanning the crowd. Panic surged through me. Every rehearsed movement, every carefully crafted persona moment seemed at risk of collapse. I quickly adjusted my posture, tilted my head gracefully, and took a step back, blending into a group nearby. The adrenaline was electric, heightening every sensation. My palms were clammy, my heartbeat thundered, yet the thrill was undeniable. I had begged for this immersion, for the chance to be fully seen as her, and now it was happening under impossible stakes. I moved toward the balcony, pretending to admire the city lights, using the moment to calm myself. I whispered softly under my breath, grounding myself in the persona. Every detail mattered. The sway of the dress, the tilt of the head, the controlled cadence of my breathing. I was caught between fear and exhilaration, between vulnerability and empowerment. The suspense was almost tangible. I imagined Emma walking through the door at that exact moment. Would she recognize me fully? Would she see through the cracks, see Alex behind her? The duality pressed on me, each heartbeat a reminder of the fragile line I walked. I noticed a stray high heel left near the balcony seating. It reminded me of the first time I had fully embodied her in private. The small, delicate steps, the thrill of transformation, the mixture of fear and excitement. Picking it up carefully, I held it in my hand, a symbolic token of the journey from Alex to her. The weight in my palm grounded me, a tactile reminder of the persona I had begged to live. Every detail reinforced the stakes. The heels, the dress, the makeup, they were more than accessories. They were the fragile threads holding my dual identity together, the tools that allowed me to navigate this public world. And tonight, every thread was tested, every detail magnified by the suspense of potential exposure. By the end of this first part of the climax, I was fully immersed, yet every nerve was alive with tension. The persona had been tested in private and semi-public spaces, but now, in a crowded lounge with potential recognition around every corner, the stakes were highest. My heart raced, my breath caught, and the thrill of being fully embodied mingled with the fear of being discovered. Every movement, every glance, every word was a delicate balance of survival and indulgence. I had begged to live as her, and tonight, the world was finally forcing me to navigate that reality under impossible circumstances. The lounge buzzed around me, laughter and chatter blending with the soft hum of music. Every glance felt sharper, every movement heavier. I could feel the tension in my shoulders, the controlled sway of my hips betraying nothing, but inside, my mind raced. The persona I had begged to become was walking the tightrope of reality. One misstep could undo everything. I moved toward a group gathered near the bar, trying to appear casual. Each step in my heels was a deliberate test, every gesture a performance. My reflection caught in a mirrored panel briefly, and I saw her, poised, radiant, undeniably feminine. And yet beneath that, Alex lingered, tense and vigilant, acutely aware of the precariousness of the moment. A familiar colleague waved from across the room, a hint of recognition in their eyes. My heart lurched. I forced a polite smile, tilting my head in the practiced way I had spent weeks perfecting. "Hey, fancy seeing you here," I said, my voice soft and melodic. They approached, closer now, scanning me with curiosity. I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. Could they sense anything? Did they see the careful construction of my persona, the hidden anxiety beneath the composed exterior? Every movement mattered. The tilt of my head, the sway of my hips, the gentle lift of my hand brushing hair from my face. I excused myself briefly, heading toward the balcony to regain composure. The cool night air brushed against my skin, a small relief from the intensity inside. I took a deep breath, focusing on the tactile sensations, the silky fabric of my dress, the slight ache from my heels, the delicate weight of the bracelet on my wrist. Every detail reinforced the persona I had begged to live. Yet the fear of exposure remained, coiling in my chest. What if Emma suddenly arrived? What if someone from work had seen me fully? The tension made my movement sharper, my emotions more acute. I had become her physically, but tonight, the suspense tested my emotional resilience in ways I had never imagined. A sudden shout from the lounge interrupted my thoughts. A man stumbled into the balcony area, spilling a drink near my feet. My heart stopped for a split second. The sound of liquid hitting the floor echoed ominously. Guests glanced our way. Curiosity piqued. I bent slightly to avoid the splash, clutching the railing, trying to maintain composure. The moment was symbolic, a reminder of how fragile my carefully constructed reality was. A single unforeseen obstacle, a small slip, could expose the duality I had begged to embody. My hands trembled subtly as I steadied myself, but the persona remained intact, a testament to the weeks of preparation and emotional investment. I looked out over the city from the balcony, letting the view ground me. The thrill of being seen, of fully inhabiting her in a public space, mingled with the terror of exposure. Each heartbeat was a drum of suspense, each breath a test of emotional control. I had begged for this experience, and now, fully immersed, The stakes had never been higher. A waitress passed by, her eyes briefly meeting mine. I smiled faintly, aware that even small interactions carried risk. The persona required constant vigilance, but the thrill of living it fully was intoxicating. I was vulnerable, exposed, yet empowered in ways I had never imagined. My gaze fell on a delicate clutch bag left on a nearby table. I picked it up, holding it as a symbol of the persona I had begged to become. It was more than an accessory, it was a lifeline, a tangible reminder that every detail mattered. The weight of it in my hand anchored me, giving a sense of control amidst the chaos of the lounge. I adjusted my posture, tilted my chin, and let a gentle smile form. Every micro-movement was rehearsed, yet infused with authentic emotion. The persona had to feel real, not just in appearance but in behavior, gestures, and reactions. The suspense of potential exposure sharpened every sensation, every heartbeat. By the end of Climax Part 2, I was fully immersed in the persona, every sense heightened by suspense and exposure. The thrill of being public, combined with the fear of recognition, created an emotional intensity that was almost physical. The persona had been tested in private, semi-public, and now fully public spaces. The stakes could not be higher. The next part would escalate further, introducing close calls, unexpected confrontations, and moments where the duality of Alex and her teetered on the edge of revelation. The suspense would reach a peak, preparing for the symbolic moments that would define the ultimate transformation. The lounge felt smaller now, the crowd closing in like a tide of scrutiny. Every laugh, every whispered conversation, seemed amplified in my ears. I moved cautiously, heels clicking against a polished floor, my body performing a careful dance of grace and poise. The persona I had begged to inhabit demanded perfection, yet every nerve screamed that one misstep could unravel everything. A waiter passed, nearly brushing against my arm. I tensed, heart pounding, reminding myself that even the smallest touch could reveal how delicate my balance truly was. The thrill of being fully seen was intoxicating, but the fear of exposure lurked behind every glance. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the ambient noise. "Alex? Is that you?" My blood ran cold. Turning slowly, I realized it was a colleague I had hoped wouldn't be here tonight. Their gaze lingered, curious, questioning, and panic surged through me. Every practiced gesture, every rehearsed smile, seemed insufficient in this moment. I forced a delicate laugh, tilting my head gracefully. "Oh, hi. Didn't expect to see you here," I murmured, voice soft yet controlled. The words felt foreign in my mouth, yet necessary. I had begged to embody her fully, and now I was performing in high stakes. Every syllable could betray Alex lurking beneath. I excused myself, moving toward the balcony again, seeking space to steady my racing thoughts. The city lights stretched endlessly below, a calm contrast to the storm within. Every heartbeat was a drum of suspense, every breath a reminder of vulnerability. I touched the hem of my dress, feeling the silky fabric and the gentle weight of my heels. The persona was no longer just an exterior. It had become a part of my movements, gestures, and even my breathing. Yet Alex lingered, anxious and tense, reminding me of the high stakes. As I steadied myself, a sudden commotion near the entrance drew my attention. Someone had dropped a tray of glasses, the shattering sound echoing sharply. Guests glanced around, curiosity piqued, and I froze momentarily. The symbolic fragility of my transformation mirrored the broken glass at my feet. One wrong move could shatter the careful persona I had begged to become. I took a slow, deliberate step back, heels steady despite the surge of adrenaline. The suspense sharpened every sense. The cool breeze from the balcony, the faint scent of perfume from nearby women, the soft hum of conversation. I was acutely aware that the persona's survival depended on composure and attention to every detail. Leaning lightly against the balcony railing, I closed my eyes for a moment. The thrill of fully inhabiting her mingled with the fear of discovery, creating an emotional cocktail that made my heart race. I realized that I had begged for this experience, not just the appearance, but the total immersion into a persona that demanded courage, attention, and audacity. Every detail reinforced my duality. Alex still existed, tense and vulnerable, while she moved with grace, confidence, and allure. The suspense of potential exposure sharpened my emotional and physical awareness, making every heartbeat feel monumental. I noticed a stray scarf caught on the railing, fluttering in the wind. Carefully, I picked it up and draped it over my shoulder, a symbolic gesture of my transformation. The scarf represented both the fragility and elegance of the persona I had begged to inhabit, a reminder that every small action reinforced the illusion and every detail mattered. As I adjusted it, I caught my reflection in a glass panel. The sight was both exhilarating and terrifying. She, my transformed self, stared back, confident and poised, yet beneath it, Alex trembled with suspense. The mirror reflected the duality I had begged to live, perfectly captured in a single, delicate gesture. By the end of Climax Part 3, the tension had reached a fever pitch. The persona was fully alive in the public space, navigating interactions, obstacles, and internal conflicts simultaneously. Every heartbeat, every glance, every subtle movement carried immense weight. The next part will escalate even further, introducing near reveals, intense confrontations, and dramatic moments that test the limits of both Alex and the persona. The suspense will peak as the transformation reaches its ultimate emotional and physical crescendo, setting the stage for the resolution in the final climax parts. The crowd around me had thinned slightly, yet the tension did not ease. Every step I took, every subtle sway of my hips, every flick of hair felt magnified in the eyes of potential observers. The persona I had begged to inhabit fully was navigating a public stage, but the lurking fear of exposure made each moment feel like a high-wire act. I adjusted my posture, lifted my chin, and breathed slowly. The external calm was a fragile veil over the tempest of nerves inside. Alex's anxiety was ever present, a silent partner reminding me that this delicate persona could be undone by a single misstep. A waiter stumbled nearby, nearly spilling a tray of drinks. Reflexively, I stepped back, heels clicking against the polished floor. The sound echoed through the room, drawing a few glances. I froze, heart hammering, aware that the suspense had now reached a peak intensity. The crowd's curiosity was palpable, yet I remained composed, every muscle tensed with anticipation. Moments like this made the stakes crystal clear. The persona I had begged to live demanded precision and grace, yet the unpredictability of the environment threatened to unravel it. Every reflex, every calculated gesture, was a test of both skill and nerve. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder. Spinning gracefully, I faced Emma, her eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and curiosity on her face. "I didn't expect you here," she said, her voice tinged with amusement. My heart lurched violently. I forced a gentle smile, tilting my head in practiced poise. "I thought I'd join you," I replied softly, keeping my voice melodic. The interaction, though brief, sent a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. The suspense of being potentially discovered by someone who knew both sides of me created a tension almost unbearable. Emma leaned slightly closer, casually scanning the crowd. Every subtle gesture she made seemed loaded with potential discovery. My pulse raced, the thrill and fear intertwining in a heady mix. I realized that I had begged for this immersion, the chance to navigate the world fully as her, but now, under real scrutiny, the emotional stakes were crushing. I could feel Alex shrinking beneath the surface, anxious and tense, while the persona projected confidence and allure. The duality was both exhilarating and terrifying, a dance on the knife edge of exposure. Every breath, every blink, every adjustment of my dress or hair was magnified under the suspense of possibility. A sudden gust of wind blew through the balcony doors, lifting the hem of my dress slightly. I grabbed it reflexively, heart racing, aware that a single slip could betray the careful construction of my persona. The moment was symbolic. Even the smallest, uncontrollable element could threaten the dual identity I had begged to embody. Holding the dress in place, I felt the weight of the transformation, the culmination of weeks of preparation, anticipation, and longing. The symbolic struggle between vulnerability and poise, between Alex and her, was laid bare in that fleeting instant. By now, the suspense had reached an almost unbearable height. My heart pounded, adrenaline coursed, and every muscle tensed in anticipation of potential exposure. The persona had been tested in private, semi-public, and fully public environments, but the stakes now felt absolute. Every glance from strangers, every sound, every subtle movement of the crowd heightened the emotional tension. I was fully immersed in her, yet every step reminded me of the fragility of this identity. The thrill of living the persona was inseparable from the fear of being revealed. By the end of Climax Part 4, the tension had ratcheted to its near maximum. The persona was fully alive, navigating interactions and environmental hazards under extreme suspense. The symbolic moments, near reveals, and emotional peaks set the stage for the ultimate test in Climax Part 5, where every decision, every movement, and every interaction will determine whether the dual identity survives or shatters under pressure. The stage is set. The audience is on edge. Every heartbeat matters. The lounge seemed to fade around me as adrenaline surged. Every sound, every flicker of movement, every glance from the crowd became a potential threat. Tonight was the culmination of everything I had begged for, the total immersion into her persona, but the stakes had never been higher. I could feel Alex tense beneath the surface, a shadow of fear and anxiety trying to claw its way through the carefully maintained exterior. Emma's gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on me. I smiled, maintaining perfect composure, but inside, my heart pounded uncontrollably. Every detail mattered. The tilt of my head, the sway of my hips, the soft cadence of my voice. I was walking a razor's edge between revelation and perfection. Suddenly, a familiar figure approached from across the lounge, my colleague from work. Recognition flickered in their eyes, and for a moment, it felt like the entire world had narrowed to a single heartbeat. My palms grew clammy, and I had to steady myself against a nearby railing. The suspense was almost unbearable. Before I could react, another complication emerged. A gust of wind from the balcony doors sent my hair brushing across my face. Reflexively, I reached up to adjust it, and in that fleeting movement, I felt the fragile mask of my persona tremble. The world seemed to hold its breath. The symbolic tension was tangible, the hair, the heels, the dress, every detail reinforcing the delicate balance of identity I had begged to live. One wrong gesture, one accidental reveal, could undo weeks of preparation, and yet the thrill of being fully immersed made the risk intoxicating. I took a slow, controlled breath, focusing on grounding myself in the moment. Every sensation, the silky fabric of my dress, the delicate pressure of my heels, the subtle warmth of my makeup on my skin, was magnified by the suspense. The persona had become second nature, yet Alex's anxiety persisted beneath the surface, reminding me how high the stakes truly were. I moved cautiously through the lounge, every step measured, every interaction a delicate negotiation between fear and exhilaration. The audience, unaware of the internal storm, continued their conversations, yet to me, each glance could carry potential exposure. Reaching the center of the balcony, I paused, lifting my gaze toward the city lights. In that moment, I allowed a small, symbolic gesture. I lifted a hand, adjusting the clutch I had carried as a symbol of my persona. The act was deliberate, elegant, and subtle, a physical affirmation of the transformation I had begged to experience. The reflection in the glass behind me caught my eye. She, my transformed self, stared back, confident, poised, and fully alive. Beneath that, Alex remained, tense and anxious, yet the duality now felt harmonious rather than conflicting. The symbolic act marked the peak of my journey from pretend girl to fully realized woman. The suspense had reached its zenith. I was fully embodied in her persona, navigating a public space fraught with potential exposure. Every heartbeat, every glance, every minor interaction amplified the emotional intensity. The thrill, the fear, the excitement, and the vulnerability intertwined into a crescendo of sensation. I realized then that this was the moment I had begged for, the ultimate test, the final step in my transformation. The world had not rejected me. It had forced me to confront every fear, every desire, every hesitation. And in doing so, it had affirmed the reality of her existence within me. Even as I exhaled, relief was fleeting. The lounge still buzzed with life, and Emma's gaze remained on me, curious, intrigued, and perhaps suspicious. The duality was still delicate, the suspense unresolved. One small mistake, one unexpected comment, could reignite the tension in an instant. The final moments of the climax set the stage for the cliffhanger, an unresolved, suspenseful scenario that leaves viewers eager for the next chapter. The persona had survived the ultimate public test, but the future remained uncertain. Would the dual identity continue to thrive? Would Emma uncover the truth? The night had settled into a quiet hum, but inside me, the storm raged on. Every heartbeat was magnified, every subtle movement charged with tension. I had fully embraced her, the persona I had begged to inhabit, but the suspense was far from over. The public test was behind me, yet the emotional consequences loomed like shadows on the edges of reality. Emma stood nearby, her eyes flicking between me and the rest of the room. Her curiosity was unmistakable, her amusement mixed with intrigue. I smiled faintly, maintaining the composure of the persona, but beneath it, Alex trembled with apprehension. The duality was still fragile. My secret, my transformation, had survived the ultimate public test, but the unresolved uncertainty was suffocating. Would Emma confront me? Would someone else notice the subtle truths hiding in plain sight? Every glance from her felt like a probe, and every heartbeat reminded me how easily the illusion could crumble. I clutched the clutch bag tightly, a final anchor in the midst of swirling emotions. The bag had become more than an accessory. It was a lifeline, a symbol of the persona's existence, and the careful orchestration of identity. Holding it close, I felt the weight of weeks of preparation, longing, and transformation. A gentle gust from the balcony doors made the hem of my dress flutter once more. Reflexively, I adjusted it, heart hammering. The symbolic fragility mirrored the suspense of my dual existence. One misstep, one accidental revelation, and everything could unravel. Suddenly, a shadow passed across the lounge, a stranger glancing in our direction, pausing for a moment longer than necessary. My pulse spiked, and Alex's anxiety surged, intertwining with the persona's poise. Every detail mattered. The tilt of my head, the sway of my hips, the subtle lift of a hand brushing hair from my face. I realized then that the suspense was far from over. Living as her had tested me in public, private, and semi-public settings, yet each interaction carried potential consequences. Every heartbeat became a ticking clock, counting down the moments until something, anything, could expose the truth. I glanced at Emma, sensing the mixture of amusement and suspicion in her eyes. Her presence was a double-edged sword, a comfort and a threat, a witness to the transformation and a potential disruptor of the delicate balance I had begged to maintain. The thrill of fully inhabiting her was intoxicating, yet the fear of exposure remained visceral. I felt both empowered and vulnerable, every emotion amplified by the suspenseful environment. The duality, Alex and her, was now intertwined in a fragile equilibrium, held together by composure, rehearsed gestures, and the hope that nothing would shatter the illusion. A soft sound behind me, a door opening, footsteps approaching, made my stomach twist. I couldn't tell if it was a friend, a stranger, or Emma herself moving closer. The suspense was suffocating, yet exhilarating. Every detail, every sensation, every heartbeat was magnified. I knew that the next chapter would bring confrontation, revelation, or perhaps a deeper immersion into her persona. The cliffhanger was set. The persona had survived, but the future of this dual identity remained uncertain. The audience is left wondering, would Alex be discovered, or could she continue living fully as the woman she had begged to become? The unresolved moment invites viewers to speculate and engage. What would you do if you were in her position? Would you risk everything for the thrill of living fully as your desired persona, or retreat to safety? The suspense sparks discussion, anticipation, and emotional investment in the story's next chapter. I stood there, clutching the symbolic prop, feeling the weight of the transformation and the unresolved suspense. The persona was alive, radiant, and fully embodied, yet the tension lingered like a heartbeat in the dark. The story had reached its emotional peak, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats, craving the next installment to discover what would happen next.